to have that set themselves. So since we haven't done it, and I don't know what PNBC's lease payment is, I apologize.
Okay.
I could tell you how it works in Hawaii. It really depends on the type of property. One of the interesting things about Hawaii is that there's a lot of agricultural land. So actually, and this is something that might factor in Austin, if you farm on your property, the leasehold terms are considerably different, okay? We'll talk about that afterwards if you'd like. But generally speaking, for condos, it can be as little as $1, okay? But there are lease transfer fees. So for instance, if you want to, after your term is up, want to then have your child or your grandchild buy that lease out or assume that lease, there's a transfer fee that you have to pay at that point, okay? So that's just one example of how it works.
I can tell you, since we've looked at these models nationally, there are no two models that are the same. And so in each and every lease that I've seen, there are different fees. Sometimes there's a maintenance fee. Sometimes the owner does the maintenance. Sometimes maintenance is in a lease, it's on the person who is leasing. So there's a lot of different ways that these leases get structured. So that's why I apologize. There's not just necessarily one way. I've seen these leases structured numerous ways, and I've seen these land trust models all across the country are all very different. So that's really why good housing counseling will be important for anyone who is a part of this, so that they really do go in eyes wide open on what they're doing and making sure they understand what they're signing.
So I have two questions that have to do with the land itself. I have neighbors that have wells on their land, and Texas water rights and all that stuff. And so how would that? One suspicion would be that whenever the water table or the water that's in the land be at risk, would the city?
I can't answer that. I don't know if you guys have a.
The second question is, I saw the map very briefly, but it seems like all of the districts proposed except McGhee would be on the east side. Were they all on the east side?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there any intention? I mean, if the idea is to make sure that low-income people can stay in Austin, is there any efforts or whatever to try to also put them on the west side so that it's a more demographic?
I'm going to look to Jesse to help me in case I say this wrong. I don't believe there were any eligibles that met all the any areas that met the criteria.
So I can. So I helped Eddie draft the bill in 2005, and Eddie wanted to do something for East Austin, so we created the definition so only East Austin qualifies. That was just being honest with you. That's the deal. He saw his district slipping, affordability just going out the door in East Austin, and particularly he was more concerned with his district, which is sort of the southern part of East Austin. But he made the definition broad enough to where it ended up, once it got applied, it ended up, affordability had gone so far down by the time they started looking at the numbers that a whole lot of other areas began qualifying. The bottom line is that we got a real problem on affordability in East Austin, and we got to do something. This and what Eddie was doing back then, and a lot of people think there's some nefarious thing, and this was like a stealth urban renewal or something like that. And I didn't see that. I mean, there's nobody who hates urban renewal. I used to work for Orly Nobles and Ms. Conley in the Blackshear Residents Organization. They taught me what urban renewal did. Urban renewal was evil. It was a land grab. It was racist. It was expropriation of African American people's land illegally from them by government agencies, and that nobody wants that to happen again. But what Eddie was trying to do in 2005 was he said, give me every tool that you can think of, and then we'll let people decide which of these things they really want to implement. So this bill's got land trust. It's got the ability to buy land off of sheriff's sales and put it in a land bank and recycle it for affordable housing. It's got this TIF. And the horse went out of the barn a long time ago in East Austin. If we had put that TIF in place, that tax increment refinancing zone in place in 2005, we would have millions and millions of dollars going into building affordable housing in East Austin today. And all of that that's happened in the last 10 years, it's gone. We can never recover that. And, you know, it's a shame. We got to have this discussion. You know, it may be that this land trust thing isn't right for Austin, but maybe the TIF is, or maybe the land bank is. But right now, we're doing nothing. And and affordability is just going away, and this community is becoming homogenized as middle income and as increasingly white, and there's no diversity, and we're losing this part of we're losing something special. And I think that what we have to do is we have to just all come to the table and have a discussion about what we're going to do about this.
And so, Betsy, I'm going to ask you this question, and then we'll get to you, sir.
Well, she didn't get her question answered about the water part. If I could just quickly answer that. Would you like an answer? Because I'm a water guy, okay? The answer is that you know, it's a private property right in Texas. Who owns the land? That's who owns the water.
So, to you, Betsy, so let's assume a scenario where the community land trust is not involved, but TIFs are still around. What would the reinvestment look like absent any community land trust? Reinvestment in low-income housing.
So the legislature is real pretty clear that we would have to, the beneficiaries of the housing would have to be folks at below 70%, 50%, 30%. So we could build more housing if there was the ability to acquire land so we could construct new. We could repair existing, and the general infrastructure that goes with those. So the TIF can pay for, again, the actual housing in the district. It's actually, all of the proceeds have to go to housing. Whatever proceeds are decided, they have to pay. There's some admin, there's administrative costs, but all it's got is somehow infrastructure or direct costs to either build housing, create, repair, or renovate so that folks can stay in their homes.
Dr. McGhee, what concerns,
if any, do you have as it relates to TIF?
Me personally? Oh boy. Oh, you get to the main part. Well, is this where I start speechifying? First of all, what a wonderful and distinguished panel. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with such distinguished people. Those of you who paid attention to the city council race last year know that I was the only candidate of the 78 who ran who explicitly made the centerpiece of his platform inequality in Austin. That is the framework through which I look at what has happened in Austin over the past 15 plus years. Not just income inequality, wealth inequality. If you want some documentation of how that got to be, by the way, my book, Austin's Metropolis Neighborhood, is available if you're interested. This, I think, is a wonderful book that tells you a lot about an interesting part of our city. It's in District B, that would be one of the Homestead Preservation Districts, my neighborhood of Metropolis, where I live and work. This is a fundamentally historical question. And in the District 3 race, I said at the time that I did not support this idea. Even though I like Eddie, I've had a fundraiser for him at my house. He's my representative. I think he really is trying to use legislation that is from the early 20th century and the initial neoliberalization of our nonprofit industrial complex that we now have in Austin, where politicians now think government can't do anything and they automatically believe throwing money at nonprofits is the answer. I believe in empowering citizens. I believe in addressing the problem and speaking the truth, which is that we have rising property valuations in this city because we put our real estate sector on steroids without due regard for the consequences of what that was going to look like on our families and upon affordability. This is not the answer. The answer is poverty, okay? California has discontinued all of its TIFs. California invented the TIF in 1952. It had over 400 of these things, more than every other state combined. Illinois also had a lot of TIFs. Chicago. Here's what happened in places such as California, Chicago, Atlanta, and Houston. And I know Atlanta and Houston well from personal experience. It went hand in hand with public housing reform. And yes, it was a modern version of urban renewal. As those of you who were here to our previous forum, one that I organized where we had Professor Edward Getz, Dean Getz of the Hubert Humphrey Public Affairs School at the University of Minnesota, talk about his book, New Deal Ruins. These policies have had a negative impact disproportionately upon African American populations on purpose. Most of these nonprofits who support this idea also support the densification and demolition of Rosewood Courts. Okay? We have a real problem in this city now with nonprofits and special interests and palace eunuchs inside City Hall making decisions and not having frank talk about what's going on. The issues are this: poverty, rising property valuations. We need to have a serious conversation about that, okay? Really, the answer is simple at this point. If you need money to tackle affordability, go to where the money is. Who has the money? Rich West Austinites. Stop playing Wall Street games, because a lot of these nonprofits think now they're Richard Subtle. Even the Housing Authority thinks they are, okay? Okay? Well, you know, again, a lot of these people are my friends. I respect them. I give money to Foundation Communities, which owns more of this type of housing than the Housing Authority does. But our city has a distinguished historical legacy in this field that we have chosen to ignore. And that's unfortunate because it is a pioneering history. We need the money. Where's the money in this city? We know where it is. Stop playing Wall Street games. And Wall Street, by the way, is here. McCormick, Barron, and Salazar is the firm the Housing Authority has engaged to help demolish Rosewood. They're the ones who just got finished demolishing Iberville in New Orleans. They're the ones who demolished Techwood in Atlanta and played a role in Allen Parkway Village and elsewhere. Okay? The most direct and honest way to do this would be on the climate front, levy the carbon tax. That's what we should do here. We should go to rich people and say, you've done pretty well in this economy over the past 20 years. You have the money, we're going to levy a tax on you. And there's a variety of ways that can be structured. Okay? Now, this is a larger political debate, but that's kind of how I see it. I hope that answers your question. As usual, I don't pull punches, you know, so.
Fred, Northwest Hills appraisals are less than where I live in Central. Their houses are selling for less than they are where I live in Alabama.
Okay, and your point is, you're saying that appraisals, look, we
It's not all in West Austin.
well, not, of course not. And just like all of East Austin doesn't qualify for a homestead preservation district, okay? You know, those are good anecdotal examples, but we know where the property valuations are highest in our city. We know overall Austin has the highest property valuations in the state. Not highest tax rates, property valuations. That's one of the reasons why our school district has recapture. By the way, do you think the school district is going to support this type of property tax diversion at a time when they are dying for money? That's one of the reasons why Jerry Brown, the governor of California, got rid of TIFs in the California legislature, because this thing had become such a hotbed of corruption to pay off developers. Okay, and these TIFs were drawn around shopping malls. They weren't in these areas that were supposedly blighted. Okay? And that money went back into the schools. And Jerry Brown now is looking like a genius after Governor Schwarzenegger basically ran California to the ground. Okay? TIFs are in many ways not appropriate for the year 2015 going forward, where the discussion in Austin is not, and elsewhere, thanks to Thomas Piketty and others, is about inequality, political economy, who gets what and why. No more playing games. Time for some real straight talk.
So, Fred, I got to push back a little on you here. I hear you say that, okay, we want to go to West Austin. We want to say, okay, let's do an income tax or a fairer form of tax and actually get the money out of folks. But, I mean,
I didn't say an income tax.
Okay, but what are you?
Eddie, initially, remember,
How are you going to get it?
Well, when Eddie Rodriguez first came into the legislature, he supported an income tax in Texas.
Okay, but
he got nowhere with it.
Where does the money come from?
Huh? Well, you know, like you said, we can have that conversation. Hawaii has taxes for tourists, okay? Austin now has become a city for tourists, not for people that live here now, okay? It's a luxury tax. There are a variety of taxes. We have an interesting tax code. There is a history here, by the way, of our 1876 Redeemer Constitution, which was written by former Confederate officers who wanted to limit the ability of the Union governments to actually do something to help free slaves. Okay, we're due in Texas for a constitutional convention, one that we almost had in the early 1970s, back when Ronnie Earl was in the legislature, right? Okay, our Constitution has been amended hundreds of times. I mean, the shelf life of your state constitution is pretty much over once you've reached 500 times. Alabama's is the only constitution that has been amended more than Texas's. Okay, so these are deep, deep problems. We have an over-reliance on property taxation. We do need an income tax here. But there's things short of that we can do now. It doesn't require us to do a flip and be like, yeah, we need TIFs, we need TERSs. That's not the answer either.
So Fred, if you don't take the TIF money, how are you going to do anything? We're going to wait for a political revolution to come? And so how are we going to, I mean, we got a problem. I mean, property is going up, rents are going up every single day. We got no money to deal with it. Now, I hear you on don't turn it over necessarily to the nonprofits that exist out there now. Let's make sure the money goes. What if we took the money and we fixed up senior citizens' homes so they could just stay in their homes? Would you support that?
Well, we have some of those programs now. Okay.
Would you support a TIF
but I don't
that would
support
fix
TIF.
senior citizens'
I don't
homes?
support a TIF in Austin at all. We have TIFs now, and they're all run by the city council. That's a problem with me. Okay. CSC. Okay, what was done there? Okay, I smell interesting collusion there between the Downtown Austin Alliance and our city council and the initial smart growth era of Mayor Watson. Okay, that's what I smell there. Okay, but look, I mean, in Chicago, there have been extensive studies of the TIFs in Chicago. What we found out is that property valuations were rising in Chicago anyway. Okay, and what you in fact did is you implemented TIFs in areas where property valuations were going to rise whether you implemented a TIF or not. What it did do, though, is it enriched a lot of politically connected developers who then participated in the daily machine. That's what you saw in California as well. In Atlanta and Houston, there's this phenomenon known as the real estate reverend, where you have pastors of megachurches who all of a sudden get religion about residential real estate, get appointed to a TERS board, and they see it as a revenue stream for their congregations. They then become part of the Lanier machine or the Brown machine. Okay? It's about politics and power. It's presented as something beneficial for the people. Okay? But, you know, if California, we really should look at this. If California, which invented the idea, abolishes all of its TIFs, and I encourage you to look at the debate that took place in the California legislature and elsewhere about why this was done, and how they recaptured billions of dollars that they put into schools, into direct government expenditures to infrastructure. This is what in the year 2015 going forward we require. We need to re-engage the New Deal and the Great Society. We have historical experience in doing this.
All right, Dr. McGhee, thank you for that.
I'm sure that we have a lot of questions here, so what we'll ask the panelists is for these questions, if you can keep your responses to about 45 seconds.
What I want to say is that after listening to some of the things that you were saying, and I've been here in Austin, and I've watched the whole transition, 15 to 10 years, I saw it coming. We used to have the town hall meetings on 11th Street. It was just whitewashing, no pun intended. It was just whitewashing, and getting ready to take our property. I realized that even back then when I couldn't buy some property, I couldn't buy any property that was there on each side because as soon as it got available, the city jacked the price up very high. Now, people think that Austin didn't do that, but you know, I actually looked at the plan, the 10-year plan for Austin before that. Now, what I see though here is, like you said, the horse is out of the corral right now. We feel helpless, and what we can do about getting some power and getting some money back. Well, the first thing is you need to vote. And if you don't know that, that's one of the big problems here. Okay? The other thing is that we're looking towards all these other things, and we haven't looked within ourselves. private organization and trying to buy property as we go along, everybody was claiming to give a little bit of money, but you give a little bit of money all the time. And we made it small enough, we can, and a large enough group, we can get a pot that's, where no one's worried about whether they're going to be, it's going to be embezzled or taken away from us, or somebody can slip and take it. But
May I respond to you real quick? I agree with much of what you said. What about cooperatives? We have Cooperation Texas. We have the Austin Cooperative Business Alliance. Okay, there's things we can do short of